Hello, my name is Thane and I like to experiment with AI art. Some time ago I got a suggestion to investigate and make a video about emotions. So I went ahead and did that. I managed to prompt so many different emotions and moods that I felt like changed the look of the images significantly. For this video I have chosen 25 negative emotions. And there will be a couple follow-up videos with other emotions as well. Also, I did test out some more that I left out because they didn't particularly depict something different. Mostly I left out those that Midjourney just could not understand or put into any context. But you can find those in my wiki on my website along with all of my other experiments. As usual, I have prompted each emotion or mood word by themselves in 3 of the most commonly used aspect ratios 1:1, 9:16 and 16:9. And after that I have prompted each word along with either landscape, wildlife, macro, city, interior, architecture, portrait, fantasy and sci-fi to provide as wide variety of subject matter as I could think of. Just to give you an idea of what each word does to each subject, because most of the time it does really matter in my opinion. I have used the same seed number with all of my prompts by setting it to --777. You do not have to specify a seed number at all in your prompts, and this is not a magical number of any kind, just a random number that I happen to select, and I've been using it to make comparisons easier ever since. And I have also used --no text, mockup as a negative prompt. This is an attempt to make the images a little bit prettier, as the current Midjourney default style for version 5 is prone to adding some random text or looking all kinds of weird sometimes. You don't have to use the exact same thing in your prompts. You can add or remove words from your prompt or from the negative side of your prompts according to what you don't want to see in your images. Those 2 are what I usually use with version 5, and as I like shorter prompts, I didn't want to add additional 20 words or more to exclude everything. So yeah, let's see those negative emotions. Sometimes emotions can be difficult to manage and can lead to some negative feelings towards others. Anger. And right away we see some really angry faces coming at you. There is a variety of photographic style and even some graphics. Landscapes with this word in the prompt are looking more hilarious than angry with the faces on the rocks and mountains. The lions and tiger definitely look quite angry in their facial expression. And in macro we kind of get a lot of teeth showing of probably some fantasy creatures like orcs and vampires. I wouldn't exactly call these macro shots, just very close portraits. In city images, I kind of get the feel of villains. I love the graphics, except the top left image, which is kind of a weird occurrence. I don't know what's so angry about the interiors, but I actually kind of like this color combination. And this is an interesting interpretation for architecture. The bottom left house is kind of on the nose with the anger, but rest of them actually have some nice designs. Portraits actually look kind of tame compared to the images we saw with just the word anger. Fantasy has some nice graphics of fantastical villains. Sci-fi ones are similarly villains, just with more tech and robotics. And red is an overarching theme that seems to be incorporated along to most of the images. When we hold grudges, it can lead to a feeling of resentment towards someone that can be hard to shake. Animosity. So this word seems to be combining the feeling and the fact that this word is quite similar to the word animal. So we get lots of animals holding a grudge. The images that are not in photographic style are quite nice actually, there's some kind of a distinct style there. The animal theme continues with nature images too. Landscapes have several animals there. The emotion word itself does not manifest that strongly in my opinion. In wildlife images we actually get many grids of animals, some of which are quite strange ones. And macro just has some cute dogs up close. City images look really cool, with a distinct style. Kind of reminds me if animals just took over human cities totally. Interiors look just normal, still no sign of the emotion, just the animals. Architecture has some interesting stuff there. But the elephant houses are looking really unique. Portraits also have just cute dog pictures. Fantasy has lots of animals there too, maybe a hint of the emotion that this is supposed to be representing. Sci-fi is doing some movie or TV series poster style, but I really like the graphics. Even when we try to get along with everyone, sometimes there are people who just don't seem to click with us. Antipathy. We get a really wide variety of stuff. The dislike part of this word's meaning does somewhat come across on the images that actually have people in them. I don't know what has happened in the portrait aspect ratio with the charts. I love the landscape images. There is a variety in the art styles, but I like each one. I don't know how the emotion is portrayed there, it doesn't seem to be, but all right. Wildlife has just some animals. Macro is also just being macro, doesn't really portray the meaning of antipathy to me. City images have a nice look to them again. Interiors are just looking like Midjourney didn't know what to do exactly. And architecture is doing some kind of schematics or flow charts again. Portraits are looking different, but I'm not getting the emotion here either. Fantasy images have a lot of text and stuff on them, even with the - no. They didn't look nice enough for me to want to try to remove the text and other stuff from the images. Sci-fi has a really nice look to it, kind of humans augmented with robotics. The facial expressions don't really show that much emotion there though. It's natural to feel a bit anxious sometimes, but when it starts to interfere with daily life, it can be difficult to manage. Anxiety. I do get the emotion here. Although Midjourney really wants to add some text to the images. Portrait aspect ratio seems to get the worst of it. But again, I didn't want to go overboard with the corrections with the - no. Landscapes are for some reason doing infographics or maps. Wildlife has one anxious animal, but the foxes don't seem particularly anxious to me. Macro is actually doing better, kind of disturbing stuff there. Is the lower left macro image supposed to be a snake? I guess that would make some people anxious, myself included. The cities have some nice drawing styles, kind of wonky, but I guess I had to draw a city, it would come out like that or even more wonkier. The interiors look quite interesting. I don't know what is so anxious about a ceiling full of balloons, but the look is definitely something else. For architecture, I guess anxiety means thin sticks that are about to fall down. The portraits don't look that anxious to me. In fantasy, I guess Midjourney didn't know what to do, so it came up with a wide variety of nonsense. Although I do get the feeling of anxiety there from the comics and the movie poster. Sci-fi is looking better, although the anxiety looks more like electricity in the image and the facial expressions don't really convey the anxiety. When we feel like we're stuck in a rut, it can be hard to find the motivation to do anything. Apathy. These faces look exactly what I would picture apathy looking like. I wonder how Midjourney has come out with dried up ground from this emotion, but that's what has happened there in a couple of images in landscape. The animals are looking quite bored. And I guess the word apathy is quite strong, but Midjourney doesn't know how to fit it into macro images. Usually macro images really do some macro shots even if Midjourney doesn't recognize a word, but this time we do get some apathetic faces again and no sign of macro. I really like the top city images there, wonderful graphics. And I am getting the feeling that in these images, apathy means disinterest or abandonment mostly for Midjourney. The cities, interiors and architecture are kind of run down in most of the images. The portraits are okay if you like that kind of style. I absolutely love the fantasy images. A few of them have again a kind of cartoon or illustration style to them. The figurine one looks cool too. And the top right one looks like concept art for a video game villain. Sci-fi also has a lot of variety and different styles there. I don't know how well the apathy comes across here, but some of the images look quite cool. Facing the unknown can be scary and make us feel a sense of unease. Apprehension. I guess the word apprehension shares the first 3 letters of an apple. So it would explain to me why there's so many apples in the images. And I guess apprehension can also mean arresting someone, which is why some of the people in the images are behind bars. I like the landscape images. The painted ones are very colorful, but the word apprehension is kind of lost in the result. The animals in wildlife are possibly kind of cautiously crossing the road or approaching water. And this is the first time I've seen snakes in the macro images. City images are again looking all really nice with the diverse styles there. Interior doesn't really bring up strong feelings. And architecture has again done some schematics or flow charts. I wonder what is causing that lately so much. Portraits are again in painted style that I don't particularly like that much, but to each their own. Fantasy images are looking nice and colorful. For some reason this word brought out some results that are not YouTube friendly. Midjourney is not supposed to be for creating images like that, but every once in a while something slips through even though the intention to create such images was not there. And sci-fi has some scary robot people with glowy eyes. When there's not much going on, it can be hard to find things to do to keep ourselves occupied. Boredom. Yes, very bored people and one dog. I wonder what is so boring about video games. In my experience, that usually fights off the boredom instead of being boring. I don't know what is so boring about those landscapes. I guess the lions in the wildlife images do look a bit bored. And macro has some weird stuff there, not sure they portray boredom to me. The city and interior images don't really convey the emotion in my opinion. And the architecture looks anything but boring to me. Kind of like the opposite in my opinion. The portraits do look boring, fantasy images too. And sci-fi is really portraying the boredom this time. Bored space explorers. Well, it could very well happen. Sometimes things don't make sense, and it can leave us feeling bewildered and unsure. Confusion. And we do get a lot of confusing looking images. Some of it is even going a little bit abstract. The nature images are also looking kind of confusing. It's hard to describe what's going on in these images. The city images are also looking kind of chaotic, but I like them. The interior images too have been overwhelmed with stuff and details. And again, architecture is doing flowcharts. The portraits and sci-fi don't really bring out the confusion in my opinion. But fantasy instead does. The images look very maximalist based on the amount of stuff and detail in there. But I love them. After being let down too many times, it can be hard to believe that anyone has our best interests at heart. Cynicism. I don't know what the emotion is supposed to look like, but there is a wide variety of stuff coming up with this word. Nature image tends to do a lot of grids and comic strips. I like some of the images. Macro is just doing entirely its own thing. And I don't know how this is supposed to be picturing cynicism. More traditional looking city and interior images. I don't see the cynicism there. And I like the look of the architecture images, some very nice looking designs. They look special and different, but not too over the top, actually something that could actually exist and be built. Portraits are looking like normal portraits. Fantasy is looking like fantasy tends to do with Midjourney, less ladies in flowy dresses though. And sci-fi again has some space explorers. But the images look nice though, not bad at all. When it feels like everything is going wrong, it can be difficult to find any hope for the future. Despair. Now these images really do convey the emotion in my opinion. The feeling is not a fun one, but this is some great art here. The landscape images also really portray the despair. I feel bad for those sad elephants in wildlife images. And the figurines in the macro images are looking very creepy and disturbing. City images are kind of tame compared what we've seen so far. But they look really nice, the style is awesome again. Interior images are just kind of abandoned, so are architecture images. I like the lower right architecture image though. The emotion again does come through from the portrait images. Fantasy is doing anime for some reason, looks nice though. Sci-fi somewhat conveys the emotion, but not as well as we've seen in prior images. But they do still look cool. Certain things can be so unpleasant to us that we can't help but feel repulsed by them. Disgust. I like the way these images are with kind of over-the-top facial expressions. Kind of like characters from kids' shows or something like that. And green seems to be a recurring color here. The landscape images look very awesomely detailed again, as I like. The green continues there as well. Wildlife just looks like normal wildlife images, nothing really disgusting about them. Or just animals can't really express this emotion. Macro again has lots of figurines and green color. The city images again very nice, somewhat disgusting theme there and green. And a lot of detail. Interior images just have the disgusting green color and grey, I guess. And I don't know what is so disgusting about these houses in the architecture images. The green continues in the last images as well. Portraits have somewhat of a disgusted facial expression, but not as over the top as just with the word disgust. I really like the top left image of fantasy. I don't particularly like the figurines and the cosplay or costume party image. The lower left sci-fi image is looking kind of disturbing. When our expectations don't align with reality, it can lead to a sense of disappointment and disillusionment. Disillusionment. I love most of these images that this word brings out. I feel like this word is so similar to illusion or illustration that this may just be what is influencing the look of the images. The landscape images are again looking very nice to me. Wildlife looks kind of like it always does for me. Macro is slightly different than it usually is, more closer to default, but still the macro is strong. I again really like the city images, so colorful. The interiors are looking quite awesome as well, the ceilings especially look very unique. And the architecture looks nice as well. I probably don't know what disillusionment is supposed to look like. The fantasy images look totally awesome, so whimsical with the balloons. Sci-fi has some cool images too, but it is kind of leaning towards the default style of the sci-fi images. Not everything is going to capture our attention, and that's okay. Disinterest. And there is really a wide variety of stuff coming up with this word, with styles varying from photographic to cartoons. Nature images are a mixed bag here. For some reason this word brings in a lot of noise, I guess, lots of text, grids and charts for some reason. It could be corrected, I guess, but Midjourney seems to be lost with this word. Okay, cities too have some maps and architecture is doing flowcharts. And interiors don't have anything that impressive there either. I am starting to question why I have chosen this word. Okay, it does get a lot better in these images. Fantasy and sci-fi have kind of a distinct style to them. They could need some more correction with more words in the no part of the prompt. And the lady in the lower left image of sci-fi is in a really odd pose there. Sometimes we can't help but feel a sense of impending doom or dread, even when there's no real reason to feel that way. Dread. But we get an overwhelming amount of dreadlocks. That tends to happen sometimes if something is more recognizable for Midjourney. Even the trees have dreadlocks in the landscape images. I'm surprised the wildlife doesn't have them. But the macro images are looking quite creepy. There's some nice images in the city, some images could require some correction because there's text appearing there. The interiors look like cars that people with dreadlocks could drive. And the houses too almost look like they also have dreadlocks. Obviously, so do all of the people in the portrait images. And there's quite many dreadlocks in fantasy images as well. Some text happening here again too, but cool images. And sci-fi images look really quite awesome. The dreadlocks look like they're made of metal and they really add something extra to the sci-fi here. There are times when we just can't seem to get along with someone, and that can lead to a feeling of hostility. Enmity. I feel a reference to a metal band based on the landscape ratio images and also the square aspect ratio images looking like album covers. The nature images look surprisingly colorful compared to what we just saw. They're actually beautiful. Wildlife images are looking a bit more ordinary though. Of course, this is also subjective. Ordinary for me means that this is what Midjourney tends to do with wildlife quite often. City images have some nice concept art. Interiors are looking like they mostly do. A few nice architecture images there actually. Portraits are looking like regular portraits. Maybe just a little bit more intense in the eyes. I like lower fantasy images. And I do like the sci-fi images as well, even though they have gone full movie poster and would probably need some more correction on the negative prompt side. It's natural to want what others have, but when it consumes us, it can lead to negative feelings towards them. Envy. Green is usually the color that is most used with the word envy. And so many handbags there. A reference of people just really being envious of the owners of those handbags perhaps? Some more green in the nature images. Especially macro images. Wildlife is again looking basically like it always does. I guess it's kind of hard to put envy in a nature picture. City struggles here as well. We've got some additional text and a green tint. But nothing enviable. I do like the architecture images, really nice houses there, quite contemporary. Portraits are looking awesome, we seem to have kind of a superhero theme going on in there. I like the lower left fantasy image, kind of superhero vibes going on there too. The bottles I am not a fan of. And sci-fi is also looking somewhat green and superhero themed. When things don't go as planned, it can be frustrating and even infuriating. Exasperation. And the people in the images do look very exasperated. A lot of painted style with strange teeth going on there. The landscapes partly follow that painterly style. The animals are also showing some exasperated emotions. I guess it's hard to understand the facial expressions of spiders. A few nice maximalist and whimsical city images. I am really loving the interiors here. Beautifully carved. And architecture images also look really cool, kind of like the style of Gaudi a little bit. Some strong facial expressions again in the portraits. I really like the fantasy images, so whimsical for some reason, so detailed and just a lot going on. Sci-fi images are good too, the emotion is again kind of not shown in them though. Or maybe it is and it's just hard to tell facial expressions of robots and people in spacesuits. Sometimes it can feel like we're just spinning our wheels and not making any progress. Frustration. The word frustration really comes through in most of these images. So landscapes have come out looking like maps. It might be due to some people getting frustrated and lost when trying to navigate possibly. The lions are looking visibly frustrated. And there's some frustrated looks in macro as well. I have no idea what they could be, definitely looking different than macro usually does. The city images really look great, so much going on in them. I don't know how car seats and cup holders portray frustration. And architecture again has some flowcharts and one very chaotic looking house that must have been frustrating to build. The faces in the portraits look more angry than frustrated to me. Fantasy is doing some video game layouts. I guess they are pay-to-win games, those can be frustrating a lot of the time and Midjourney obviously knows that. The sci-fi images do have some frustrated faces. When we feel like we've been wronged, it can be difficult to control our anger and rage. Fury. I get the feeling that these could look like scenes out from a movie. A quick Google search does confirm that. The landscapes are looking quite awesome. I am getting some Mordor vibes from these. The deer in wildlife images are quite fierce and furious. Macro has surprisingly some tiny robots and bugs. Well, the bugs are normal, the robots are new for me. City seems to be doing some movie posters for us. Interiors are kind of boring. And architecture has done logos. Let's move on. I guess the movie is heavily influencing portraits, fantasy and sci-fi as well. I do like the lower left fantasy image. Everyone has their bad days, and sometimes we just can't seem to shake off our bad mood. Grumpiness. Really grumpy people indeed, and some grumpy cat images as well. The landscapes are kind of funny with the grumpy faces. And the wildlife animals are visibly grumpy too. As are the pugs in macro images. So far the grumpiness has really been well portrayed, but it's kind of hard with these. City images are looking great, at least the graphic ones. I don't see the interiors as looking particularly grumpy or noteworthy at all. And the architecture is different, but I wouldn't guess grumpy if I didn't know what the prompt is. Portraits are grumpy. And I really like the old grumpy guys in the fantasy and sci-fi images. Extreme negative feelings towards someone can lead to a sense of hatred that can be hard to let go of. Hatred. There is a mix of bar charts and some superhero comics it seems. I really like some of these images. And really dislike some. A lot of text popping up in the nature images. And some weird stuff as well in addition to the maps and bar charts. Macro is just not coming across at all here. The bear with horns is a strange one. And so is the tiger bear. For city we get some board game covers. The images could look quite nice, but they must need some more words in the -- no part of the prompt to get rid of the text and other artifacts. So in the interior somebody must really hate cleaning. The architecture images look nice, very intricate models and schematics there. The portraits look like video game characters to me. I really like the lower two images of fantasy, some concept art and comic art there. And the sci-fi images are also looking quite atmospheric and kind of like out of a video game. When we're unsure of what to do, it can be hard to take that first step. Hesitation. There's some really great art in the square and portrait aspect ratios. Nature images are looking nice, although I am not sure the emotion is really represented here. I don't know how hesitation becomes abandoned parts of a city. Or abandoned car interiors. And then architecture is doing kind of nice architectural designs concepts. Portraits seem to be of just very serious people. Fantasy and sci-fi have kind of card layouts and movie poster looks which probably would need some more corrective words to get rid of. There are times when we just don't care about something, and that's okay too. Indifference. These could be the looks on people's faces when they just don't care about anything anymore. Lots of black and white photography, it seems. Which continues into landscapes too. Macro is doing half bugs and half portraits of people and not even extreme close-ups, strangely. I really like the city images, too much text but still. Interiors do look like places that have run down because nobody has cared enough to take care of the places. And architecture is just looking like normal houses. I don't know how these would represent indifference. Portraits do have some indifferent looking people. I really like the fantasy images again, so much detail. Sci-fi is okay too, I am a bit indifferent about those images. Little things can sometimes grate on our nerves and leave us feeling annoyed. Irritation. Indeed, very irritated people and caricatures. I guess Midjourney thinks desert landscapes are irritating. And the zebras do look kind of irritated too. Don't know about the spiders. I also don't know how those city images can be representing irritation, but they again look so busy and awesome for me. Some more boring car interiors. And quite nice architecture, maybe a little bit irritating in some places due to the non-symmetry. Bug bites can feel irritating. Fantasy is looking very weird. Possibly even irritating. And sci-fi looks cool. After experiencing disappointment or disillusionment too many times, it can be hard to maintain a sense of excitement or enthusiasm. Jaded. Alright, the last stretch. This one really shares some similarities with the color and gemstone jade. So it really goes towards that instead. The color is really pretty on the landscapes. And the deer pictures are quite nice too. The jade color continues here too. I am getting a bit jaded myself towards the end here. Not particularly liking the city or interior images. But some of the architecture images are looking quite nice, some Art Nouveau feel to them. The portraits look nice. Fantasy is just a bunch of random stuff. But I have no idea what has happened to sci-fi. These look so cool, even the jade coloring and the gemstone are gone from here and the style is just so distinct. I wonder why it's only appearing with sci-fi. Okay, that was the last one. Next time I'll look at some of the more positive emotions, probably, if I don't get sidetracked with some other ideas in the meantime. I am still waiting for the update to the default style of version 5 that has been promised for weeks in the Midjourney office hours. It is supposed to make the life easier for most people like me who like to do some shorter prompts. I guess I could also experiment some more with the stylized value. There is just an endless amount of possibilities. I haven't even had time to look at the new styles in Midjourney. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see me take a look at next. And also let me know if any of these emotion words have inspired you in any way. I personally feel like I've had some really nice and sometimes surprising results again. So if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to my channel. I do appreciate all of the comments and likes I get. Thank you to everyone who has done that on my videos so far. Your kind words mean the world to me, even if I haven't directly addressed some of your comments. Sometimes it's just so hard to accept compliments and respond in a way that really represents my gratefulness. So thank you everyone. And let's continue prompting.